God of War Ragnarok. Why was Mimir stuck in a tree? As noted, Mimir used to be an advisor to Odin and ambassador to other realms. Odin proved to be a hard guy to work with, though. The giants prophesied Ragnarok would see Odin killed, which made him one paranoid all-father. Odin had Thor go on a giant killing spree, which is why there are no giants walking about. Mimir got on well with the giants, so much so that they took out one of his eyes and replaced it with a Bifrost that allowed him to travel between realms with ease. Seeing Mimir's close relations with the giants, Odin began to suspect betrayal. He imprisoned Mimir in the tree on Midgard's peak for all eternity until Kratos and Atreus arrived on the scene. Norse Mythology. Mimir, meaning the rememberer or the wise one in Old Norse, is a figure in Norse mythology who is renowned for his knowledge and wisdom. He is beheaded by the Vanir Gods during the Æsir-Vanir War. Odin revives the head of Mimir through some magic after the Vanir gifted to Odin. Afterward, Odin carries around Mimir's head and it recites secret knowledge to him. He is the maternal uncle of Odin. In the God of War series. Background. Hailing from a faraway land, Mimir was a fairy king's errand boy and unofficial jester. Frequently, Mimir and other fairies, nicknamed Goodfellows, would walk amongst mortals to sow mischief, and as long as his lord was kept amused, they were spared the consequences. Eventually, Mimir's king grew weary of his antics, forcing him to leave his homeland. After many years traveling north, Mimir eventually ended up in the Nine Realms and learned of Odin, king of the Æsir. Determined to prove his worth, Mimir approached Odin and provided him with Mimisbrunn, a supposed mystical well of knowledge, which was actually a well of water laced with enough mystic mushrooms to make a god see visions. Despite Odin tearing out one of his eyes after imbibing of the hallucinogen, Mimir claimed the All-Father was bestowed with greater sight and was hired as Odin's primary advisor and ambassador to all the other realms. By his own admission, his job was initially to enable Odin, though over time, he began to become concerned with the well-being of ordinary people and the world in general and sought to contain the All-Father whenever possible. Unlike the Æsir, Mimir sought to establish peace between the realms, as he believed it was the best plan to avert Ragnarok. However, Odin rarely looks in his eyes. Because Mimir spent so much time traveling through realms, they believed it would be more convenient than a crystal he could lose. To numb the pain of the procedure, Mimir drank 16 cups of Billow Maiden's ale. So inebriated, Mimir almost convinced the giants to put the crystals in his nipples instead, jokingly calling himself Mimir of the Bifrost teats. However, Mimir's efforts to preserve peace would be stymied by Odin's paranoia, his obsessions with prophecies, and allowing his son, Thor, to go on a killing spree on the giants. Thus, much like with Tyr, Odin confronted Mimir, suspecting that he aided the giants. As punishment, Odin imprisoned him on Midgard's highest peak, bound to a tree made indestructible even to Thor's hammer. As additional punishment, Odin removed the horned god's bejeweled left eye and hid it to keep Mimir from traveling to other realms. Mimir then realized that Odin had never been fooled from the drugged well incident where they first met. Mimir would spend the next century being tortured by Odin himself on a daily basis, eventually making him yearn for death, for Odin's torment rendered Mimir's bound existence anything but living. God of War, 2018. 109 winters following his imprisonment, Baldur, along with his nephews, Thor's sons Magni and Modi, confronted him and attempted to bribe him with freedom in exchange for revealing whereabouts of a tattooed man traveling with a child. Despite their promises, Mimir refused to aid them. Not only was the bound god unable to locate the pair due to a concealing rune placed on them by a witch, but he also knew that Odin would not allow anyone to either release or harm his former advisor. As such, Mimir bitterly stated that they had nothing to offer him and spitefully demanded Baldur to take his questions, threats, and the two worthless wankers and leave. Before leaving, Modi promised to be back for Mimir's other eye when no authorities were watching. Almost immediately after the trio left, a tattooed man and a boy revealed themselves to him, Kratos and his son Atreus. As Kratos sent his son away to check if the Æsir had doubled back, Mimir remarked that Atreus was unaware of his father's true nature as a god. He then proceeded to introduce himself to Kratos. Upon boasting he could answer any questions they ask, he was a bit stumped to answer why Baldur was hunting them, admitting there were a few gaps in his knowledge, but insisted he could figure it out eventually. When Atreus described their journey to the tallest peak in all the 9 realms, Mimir clarified that Atreus was mistaken about choosing Midgard's tallest peak, as the tallest peak in all of the realms was actually in Jotunheim, the inaccessible realm of the giants. With his remaining right eye, Mimir projected a magical picture of the tallest peak of Jotunheim through the stone pillars behind them, the last known gate to said realm. He further explains that, among all the living, he is the only one who knows how to gain entrance, as only he can talk to the only giant left who knows. Description: when he is first found, Mimir is shown to be embedded within and partially merged into a tree. He has 2 small horns on his head and a growing, grey beard. The crown of his head is covered in runic tattoos, and his lower lip is tattooed with a pattern, trailing down from the sides of his mouth and ending just above his beard. He is missing one of his glowing, golden eyes. He eventually is decapitated by Kratos and brought back to life, though he still looks the same. While dead, his eye glow fades and reveals his pale yellow iris. Later, Kratos and Atreus retrieve Mimir's other eye, and put it back in his head, and find that it still works. During battles, Mimir serves as a second pair of eyes for Kratos, normally alarming the Spartan that an enemy is attacking from one of his blind spots.